What's going on, everyone? The Lakers and Rob Pelinka are currently shopping, trying to find a deal. They are a big buyer. According to reports, the Lakers and the Knicks seem to be the two biggest buyers on the market right now. They're trying to heavily push for some type of deal. The Lakers are trying to find anything to kind of bolster the roster to make them in contention, right? The Lakers look really good, and they look like a team that's just like a piece or two away. The issue that the Lakers are having is that teams aren't really huge into like selling at the moment. Now, as we get closer to the trade deadline, January, February, very likely the Lakers will have all kinds of options, especially from maybe even other teams that we aren't aware of at this time. And teams are kind of trying to add premiums to certain players, right? Like Bojan Bogdanovic, the Lakers have made a play for him, trying to give up a first. They want an unprotected first because the way that they look at it, as many teams do, is like, we could probably get a first at the trade deadline for him. So if you want him now, well, then it's going to cost you a little more. So instead of a protected first, well, we want an unprotected first. So Rob's doing his due diligence, trying to work out some sort of deal. Now, the Lakers don't have much here working wise, right? You got Patrick Beverley, Kendrick Nunn, Russell Westbrook are your primary trade assets as far as players go, and then the picks. They got like all of their second-round picks and then 2 first-round picks, although they could do like some pick swaps, things like that to kind of entice and get a deal done if they needed to. Now, Russell Westbrook, they're probably not trading Russ unless some deal comes along, right? The Lakers have this like sort of pipe dream that maybe a Damian Lillard or Kevin Durant or Kyrie or something like that. Now, if for whatever reason one of those guys became available and you could get them, then yes, you do that in that case. But let's be honest, none of those things are probably going to happen. Maybe Chicago, maybe you get DeMar DeRozan, something like that. But is that really worth giving up Russ and everything that he's providing? I don't know. Some people may think so, some people may not. But nonetheless, you're probably keeping Russ this year. So that leaves Patrick Beverley and Kendrick Nunn. And right now, the Lakers are currently shopping Patrick Beverley, Kendrick Nunn, and a first-round pick and trying to see what kind of deals they could work out in that regard. Now, also, you could always add like a JTA or a Damian Jones or something like that if you need to clear, a couple million more. You got other options that you could tack on to get to a salary or two if you needed to. But I wanted to break down and take a look at some of the trades and some of the possibilities and kind of explore things that I personally feel are the most likely and just deals that I think make the most sense. And these are deals that are currently in play, that are currently potential. It's not like some, far-fetched deal. Like the Chicago deal, stuff like that. We'll save those for another day. These are just the deals that we know are very likely could potentially happen. And starting with the Indiana Pacers deal, right? Now, realistically, I don't know how much this deal is currently on the table, if at all. The Indiana Pacers look like they may extend Miles Turner, and they're looking to kind of give him a new contract. I think it boils down to, does Miles Turner want to stay with Indiana, right? Miles Turner himself has came out and said, hey, if I was the Lakers, I would trade for me. Now, the Lakers, unless they trade Russ, which I don't think they're going to do, you're not going to be able to get both guys, but you get either or, right? So maybe you go get a Buddy Hield to give you some shooting, or maybe you go get a Miles Turner, give you another big. Although, personally, I don't really think they need another big. I think Thomas Bryant has shown enough to show like he's perfect in a backup role. He could even play next to Anthony Davis if you need him to. You got Wynn and Gabriel. I think their big man lineup of LeBron, AD, and then Wynn and Thomas Bryant, I think is more than enough. You don't need a guy to come in and play 35 minutes a game at center, right? You want Anthony Davis to play center for the most part. Also, like even if you look at the bubble year, right? Yes, you had JaVale McGee, you had Dwight Howard, but there were games where they just didn't play, right? They had DNPs or, they played limited minutes, and even in the playoffs especially, right? Anthony Davis played a majority at the 5. He did play some 4, but especially in the big games, closeout games, to close out the fourth quarters, right? He was playing center, and that's where he's best utilized, and he's having a monster season. He's right now the best player in the league playing the center spot. So would Miles Turner be okay coming off the bench or, in some games, or not playing or closing out games at times? He doesn't want to play the 4. Anthony Davis doesn't really want to play the 5, but even if you were to say alternate them on offense and defense, then you're running Miles Turner as a wing player, might as well just go get a wing, right? Especially if you're running him as like a shooter or, 3-and-D style guy. He's not going to be able to guard perimeter guys. You also neutralizing a lot of your rebounding, right? By going, the whole point of going big is to go big. But if you have one of your bigs just basically being, a 7-foot wing, right? Like it neutralizes a lot. Now, I wouldn't be upset if they went and got Miles Turner. I just don't know if this deal is on the table anymore. I do think it comes down to, would Miles Turner be willing to stay? What Indiana look like going forward, right? Like Indiana's had a pretty solid season, right? But they're not winning anything this year, and they know that. And so how do they look at it? Do they look at, hey, let's just go get something for Miles Turner, especially if Miles Turner doesn't want to be extended by Indiana? Do they look at it as like, hey, we're not winning anything? Yes, it would be nice to be in a position to maybe tank for like Victor Wembanyama or something, but maybe we could get these guys, unload them, and try to get some assets in the meantime, get whatever picks we can, and kind of go forward. That's most likely what I think could happen with Indiana, but if anything does happen with this, I think now it's going to be more likely towards the trade deadline rather than immediately, which the Lakers preferably would like to get a deal now. So I wouldn't really put the Indiana Pacers trade very high as far as like a deal that's going to get done. I think that boat has kind of sailed, but you never know. I just thought that this one was the one that I wanted to talk about first, because this is the one that many fans seem to really want, as well as the deal that was like almost, that basically was done. The Lakers just backed out of it. And based on reports, Jeannie Buss was the one that basically said, no, let's wait and see. Let's see what we can do with Russ. And then the New York Knicks deal. Now, personally, this is kind of looking to be like the most realistic, just because, one, the Lakers do have interest in Cam Reddish, obviously, as well as Evan Fournier. And they want a first-round pick. And based on reports, even from Knicks people, the Knicks are reluctant to give up a first, but it's not out of the possibility, right? Like they may end up caving for a first. So if you could get Evan Fournier, Cam Reddish, and a first-round pick for like, say, Patrick Beverley and Kendrick Nunn, and you don't have to give up any of your first, now you have 3 first-round picks, and you have Russell Westbrook come the trade deadline. All of a sudden, that could open up a lot of potential deals that could really make your team a lot better if you were to trade Russ, right? Obviously, you don't want to trade Russ just to trade Russ. He's actually very valuable for the Lakers right now, but his value as far as other teams' perspectives isn't, right? He's $47 million. Most teams don't have the salaries to unload without like just dismantling their team, right? And I'm sure if like Russell Westbrook had $20 million, a $20 million contract, I think the Lakers would have all kinds of buyers for Russell Westbrook. I really do, because there are a lot of teams that would see him and go, man, imagine having Russ off the bench, right? Like that would be great. Like especially like a team like Phoenix, like they could be looking at it like Chris Paul's always hurt, right? Like imagine if we could trade like Jay Crowder and, a couple pieces and go get like Russell Westbrook off the bench. But now you can't because, he's making $47 million. It's hard for teams to get to that salary. But the Knicks, they're a team that want to unload salaries, right? Julius Randle, Evan Fournier are 2 players that have been kind of linked in rumors to the Lakers. Now, I don't think the Lakers are going to trade Russell Westbrook for this deal, so I don't think they're going to get these 3. But Cam Reddish and Evan Fournier are a real play, and right now seem to be the most realistic, right? The Knicks seem really like adamant about like, hey, like let's do a deal. Like they seem the most willing to do a deal, like even right now. And the Lakers could get Cam Reddish, sizable wing, with plenty of upsize, but he is a real question mark. How is he as far as, his work ethic, right? There's concerns with that dating back to Duke, right? About him kind of just not really willing to put in the work. But you got a guy like LeBron James, maybe he can kind of light a fire under Cam. Also, environment, change of scenery. He's a guy that's never really gotten a fair chance. When he got drafted by Atlanta, immediately they went and got a bunch of guys, veteran guys that played his role. So he was kind of the odd man out. The Knicks start trying to trade for him. Tibbs is like, I don't want Cam Reddish. Do not trade for Cam Reddish. They end up trading for Cam Reddish, and then like weeks later tried to flip Cam Reddish to the Lakers and in some sort of deal that ended up falling through at the final hour. So maybe the Lakers could now go get Cam Reddish, and it kind of gives you that young talent, like low risk, high reward type player. You're going to re-sign him. Evan Fournier, you're taking on his salary. Question is, do you really want to take on his salary? Because that basically ruins all of your cap flexibility. But if you do get a first, and if Evan Fournier can kind of get back to being Evan Fournier, right? Like Orlando Evan Fournier, like now you're talking like a real sort of 3-and-D style shooting guard that can play some small forward, right? You're talking about a guy, he's got decent size, 6'6", who can shoot the ball. He has a 38% three-point percentage for his career. He's not a great defender. He's not a lockdown defender, but he is a guy that can defend. He's a guy that can sort of funnel the offensive player into, like an Anthony Davis or something like that to help defense. So, I mean, I wouldn't be completely against it. And right now, this might be the most likely. Also, another worthy note is that based on sportsbooks odds, which sportsbooks are usually pretty spot on with this stuff, based on sportsbook odds, Russell Westbrook's number one destination for his next team is the New York Knicks. So I don't know, maybe they have something in the works, because I mean, we don't know all the details that are going on behind the scenes. Look, if the Lakers were to trade Russ for, say, Randall Fournier and Cam Reddish, and then, maybe they do take, because there's talks about like the Lakers kind of want Derrick Rose too, so maybe they get Derrick Rose and then they get a first. So they're basically taking all of the Knicks salary and then getting a first round pick in the deal. I would guess that the Lakers end up taking Julius Randle and try to flip him somewhere. That would be my guess. But we'll see. We'll see how this goes. Next up is the deal that I think may make the most sense would be especially if you could get Saddiq Bey. If you could work out a deal to get Saddiq Bey and Bojan Bogdanovic. Now, obviously, the Lakers already put an offer in for Bojan Bogdanovic. They wanted a protected first and Patrick Beverley, Kendrick Nunn, but the Detroit Pistons said, we want an unprotected first, which the Lakers have been reluctant in. Again, Detroit's a team that doesn't really want to trade Bojan Bogdanovic. They're not against it. They just see him as a guy, as a veteran leader, a mentor, a guy that if they can turn their season around next year could be a huge valuable piece, but they are still a tanking team and they're one of the best at it this season. So unloading Bojan Bogdanovic and getting some assets does make a lot of sense for them, especially since they got him for like a bag of peanuts, right? And so it would make sense to try to get some real assets for him. And if you could get a potential lottery pick, that's why they kind of want an unprotected first. And the way they're looking at it, as I mentioned earlier, is like, look, we can get a protected first from you at the trade deadline. So why trade him now? And what if something else? What if another team is willing to come in and give us 2 firsts, or give us a first in a couple seconds, or, give us a young player or something, right? Like if you want Bojan now, well, then it's going to cost you a little more than it would otherwise. I do think it is possible that Detroit comes around to a protected first, depending on what those protections are, right? Like, I don't think they want to do like a top 10 protected, but maybe like a top 5 or top 3 protected. I think the Detroit Pistons would do it, but I would imagine that if they do it, it won't be till like probably next month or closer to the trade deadline. But if you're the Lakers, the Detroit Pistons do want to unload Saddiq Bey. That has been heavily reported. And also, the Lakers have a real shot at getting Saddiq Bey outside of Bojan Bogdanovic, right? Like, Saddiq Bey is reported as gettable, was the word that was used, that he's gettable for the Lakers. So maybe they could work something out, maybe like an unprotected first and a second round pick. Maybe you get Saddiq Bey and Bojan Bogdanovic. In that case, you get 2, 3-point shooters. You get a young 3-and-D style player. Again, not the greatest defender in the world in Saddiq Bey, but he has all the intangibles. And Darvin Ham, look what he's been able to do with some of the guys on this team that weren't defenders that are now actually playing really good defense, especially like Russ. Saddiq Bey has all the intangibles to be a solid defender. He can play both forward spots if you need him to. He's got good size. He can get hot. We've seen him put up, a 50-point game. And then Bojan's not a great defender, but he's not as bad as many people make him out to be. Like, people make Bojan out to be just like an open door. He's not that bad. And he was really good in Utah at like just helping funnel to Rudy Gobert, right? You got to think, at one point, Joe Ingles and Bojan Bogdanovic were the 2 wing spots, right? With Rudy Gobert. So, and they had one of the better defenses. And that's because you had guys like Bojan who could funnel his defender into a Rudy Gobert, something like that. So imagine what you could do with Anthony Davis. So Bojan would be fine. Not just that, but he is super efficient, knocking down the three ball. He's 50, 40, 90 this year, just shooting the lights out, 44% from three. And he doesn't need 30 shots to do it. Right? He could go get you 15 a night on just like a couple handful of shots. Give him like 15 shots a game and he'll probably get you 15 and 20 points night in and night out. So he would probably be the perfect complement. He's the guy that I kind of really want to see the Lakers go get. But we'll see. I mean, it always comes down to price. It comes down to availability, right? Can you do it? Like Detroit, they don't need to rush to trade him. They got him locked up for the next 2 years. So it's not like they need to trade him tomorrow, or it's not like they're worried like, man, if we don't trade him, then we lose him for nothing this year. No, they don't have to worry about that. Bojan already signed the extension. They're in a great spot. They're kind of in the position of power. So we'll see how that develops. Then the other option, sticking with Detroit, would be a sort of Russ deal, right? Maybe you do like Bojan, Alec Burke, do like a Nerlens Noel and then a Sadiq Bey. Maybe you give up a first, a couple seconds, and then Russell Westbrook. Maybe you do something like that. Just something that I wanted to point out. Again, I don't think they're going to trade the Russell Westbrook, but it is an option. You get Bojan, you get a center, a defensive type of center. You get Alec Burke, 3-and-D shooting guard player, and then maybe you could even convince them to throw in Sadiq Bey, give an unprotected first, maybe give 2 seconds, or maybe a pick swap or something like that. And now you basically rounded out your roster, right? Now you got 4 guys that can come in and really kind of do a lot. You'd also still have Patrick Beverley and Kendrick Nunn along with another first that then you could take and maybe go do another deal. Maybe you do go do the Knicks deal at that point, right? Maybe take those guys, go get Cam Reddish and Evan Fournier, get some more shooting, and then you have like a Sadiq Bey and Cam Reddish for the future as like your wings. That is a real possibility. That's something that they could explore. Just thought that this was worth mentioning as well. But again, very likely it would just be most likely Bojan Bogdanovic or maybe an Alec Burke and Sadiq Bey, something like that. But the Spurs deal, right? Now, the Spurs, they could go several options. Now, obviously, the Spurs are a player for Russell Westbrook as well because they just want some assets. They want some pieces. But without Russell Westbrook, you could get, you could get either pair of these three. So you could get a Doug McDermott, Jakob Poeltl, Josh Richardson, Jakob Poeltl, or you get Doug McDermott and Josh Richardson. I do think you have to throw in like a Damian Jones or something like that into the deal, but fine, they could do that. Spurs would probably take it on, and they're in a good spot, right? That is something that could be beneficial to the Lakers. You get, especially if you want to get a big man, right? You could get Jakob Poeltl and like a Josh Richardson. Josh Richardson could be like our KCP style player. I do think the Spurs are up there as one of the more likely options, right? Because again, Spurs are tanking. They're probably losing Jakob Poeltl. They're probably losing Josh Richardson after this. They're probably losing all 3 of these guys after this season. So, might as well get some assets than nothing. There's a lot of people that are like, oh, like Pop, like why would Pop ever trade with the Lakers? Look, this isn't the Spurs dynasty Spurs, right? Like at that point, yes, why would he make a deal with the Lakers? Now, he's just trying to put his team in the best position possible. They're a tanking team. They're in a completely different circumstance than they are now. And if they can get assets and the Lakers have the best option and the best deal, he's going to take it, right? And so if you're the Lakers and you could get a combination of these 3, then that would be cool. Like I said, Josh Richardson, Jakob Poeltl, Doug McDermott, Jakob Poeltl, something like that. Also, Russ play, you could do the Russ play and also get a trade exception, right? If you take Jakob Poeltl, you'd get about a $15 to $16 million trade exception, something like that around there. Might be a little less, but give or take somewhere in like the 13 to 16 million range. But if you don't take Jakob Poeltl, you get about a $21 million trade exception. So you could do that as well. So you could do like Josh Richardson, Doug McDermott, get the big trade exception, and then maybe go look to make a deal. Maybe go get another shooter, or maybe you could use that for Bojan, because maybe they're like, we don't want the player, but we'll take the trade exception. That's something you could do as well. So that's an option as well. Also, I do think, and it's worth noting, and I'll probably dive into some of these in another video, but 3-team deals could also open up a lot for the Lakers, and work out various deals and kind of get pieces, interchangeable parts going, and the Lakers kind of getting a few guys that they want. that's an option too. But I definitely think the Spurs are up there as one of the top options for the Lakers. I just think it comes down to price, and it comes down to when are the Spurs ready to make the deal, right? Because the Spurs were willing to take on Russ in the offseason in any Kyrie deal because they wanted the assets, right? They don't want Russ for Russ. And so if you're the Spurs and you were willing to take on Russ for first, wouldn't you be willing to take on a Patrick Beverley and Kendrick Nunn? Right? Because they don't care about the players. They just want the assets. So, if you could get a Jakob Poeltl, Josh Richardson for a first round pick and maybe like a second, I do think the Spurs would bite. And I do think that would be a good deal. Again, you kind of round out your roster. You got Jakob Poeltl. You could start him. You could bring him off the bench. I mean, he came off the bench for the Spurs even. And he's a guy that's not really going to give you any fuss. And that's kind of one of the reasons I would prefer Yaka over a Miles Turner. Because if it's game 7 of the playoffs, and it's close game, you're trying to close out, like you could have Anthony Davis play the 5 and Jakob Poeltl is not going to sit there and be all upset and be on the bench pouting like Miles Turner, I think would. So that's something else as well to kind of mention and keep in mind. But I definitely think the Spurs are a real player. The Spurs deal, you could maybe make an argument that it might be the most well-rounded deal, because if you could get Doug McDermott, Josh Richardson, you get your 3-point shooter, your 3-point specialist, and then you get Josh Richardson who can come off the bench again, a KCP style player, 3-and-D style player. That's an option. Or you go get a big if you want to go big. Although again, I don't really think they need a big. I think Wenyen Gabriel and Thomas Bryant are more than enough, but some people feel otherwise. And then lastly is the Hornets deal. I mean, in all honesty, the Hornets deal might be the best deal for what the Lakers need, especially if you could get a PJ Washington. If you could get a PJ Washington and a Kelly Oubre, that would be fantastic. Or if you could work it out to where, this is another Russ play if you wanted to, get like PJ Washington, Kelly Oubre, and Terry Rozier. That's something as well. And then, the Lakers could also maybe then go look at making another expanded move and work out some sort of, multiple deals and really put them over the top. But look, the Hornets, I think, have all the pieces that the Lakers really need. Again, another tanking team, one of the worst, one of the best at tanking, but one of the worst teams in the league. They would do themselves a huge favor by unloading some salaries. So, that's an option too. Right? And try to work out some deal with the Lakers. We know that they have talked in the past. We know that they've even talked about trying to work out some 3-team deals. They're also going to have some decisions coming up, right? Because they have Gordon Hayward right now, who is a tough trade. He had fractured his shoulder. He can't stay healthy. He again continues to constantly. It's really sad. Like, it's really sad what's happened to Gordon Hayward, because Gordon Hayward, in all honesty, might be the perfect fit next to LeBron James and Anthony Davis. An unselfish player, a Swiss Army knife, can play defense, can play on the ball, can play off the ball, shoot, pass. You can run your offense through him. I mean, Utah Gordon Hayward was a beast. Right? Like, that dude was like a 25, 5-5, like night in and night out. Like, the dude was just a solid player, right? And looking like a real all-star in this league for a long time. Injuries end up happening, and it's unfortunate. But they have his salary. They have Terry Rozier's salary. On top of those two salaries, they got to work. They got to figure out what are they going to do with Miles Bridges. Are they going to bring him back next year or this year? Are they going to pay him? Wouldn't you like Victor Wembanyama? Like, they're a real player for that. So the Hornets are definitely a team to kind of keep an eye on and keep a lookout for, because I really think that they're a team that is willing to do it. And the question just becomes, 1, what's the price? And 2, when would they be willing to make that move? Are they willing to do it now? Do they want to do it more towards the trade deadline? I don't know why they would want to wait till the trade deadline, because I mean, if you could do the deal, you could do the deal. But would they be willing to give up a PJ Washington? Because you're not taking Gordon Hayward at this point. Kelly Oubre would be fantastic, but you need more than just Kelly Oubre, especially if you're giving up picks or assets or something, right? So if they're not willing to give up PJ Washington, would they give up Miles Bridges, right? Are they kind of like, hey, we don't want to deal with the headache and what comes with Miles Bridges if we were to bring him back, if you guys want to do it? I definitely think that could be an option as well. Maybe work some deal out with that. But I think ultimately, as much as I really like the Hornets deal, the question is PJ Washington. Would they be willing to trade PJ Washington? And what do they want? Like, would they want both first? Because if they want both first, then no, it's a hard pass. But, if you could do it for one first and maybe like a couple seconds or something, then I think you do that. You pull the trigger, go get Kelly Oubre, go get PJ Washington, and now you got your wing size. You got guys that can score and really kind of help round out this roster, because ultimately that's what the Lakers need. The Lakers need they need those starting level players to kind of round out the roster and kind of allow other guys to get in position to where they're at. So, again, we got options, which is good. That's what you want, right? You want options if you're the Lakers and just Lakers Nation in general, like the fandom. We want to have options because that gives us opportunity and gives us some leverage, right? Because it's like, yeah, well, we have 5. If you only had one deal, it's like, well, now that team has all the leverage, right? The team that, hey, what are your other options, right? But if you have several options, well, then it's like, well, you're not our only option. And then now it's just finding which team is willing to cave, which team is willing to come down on their price. And if you can find a team to do that, now you're in a real conversation. Now you have a real opportunity and maybe could get something done. But we'll see. Again, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? Are there any of these deals that you'd really love? Any of these deals that you're like, this is the deal we need to make? Which deal do you think is most likely? Again, personally, I think the Spurs, the Knicks, and Detroit are the 3 most likely scenarios. It's just going to come down to price. Now, I think Indiana's kind of off the table, and I think I think that the Hornets, that comes down to PJ Washington. Would they be willing to trade PJ Washington? If they're not, then that probably isn't something that gets done. And we'll see. Hopefully a deal can happen sooner rather than later. Again, these were just the trades. I'm sure there are trades that we don't even know about that the Lakers are talking about. And, of course, you got like Chicago, Kuz, things like that. I didn't really want to talk about those in this video just because, again, I was trying to stick to the trades that I think are most likely to happen and the ones that have just been heavily reported as a real possibility rather than like maybe this could happen. So, again, love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Let me know down in the comment section below.